limitless in reach, crossing seas and mountains, connecting what was once apart. Nusantara Lima, Indonesia's giant leap. With the largest satellite capacity in Southeast Asia, it brings digital services to every corner of the nation with ease. It paves the way for equal internet access, powering the digital economy and standing as a symbol of our nation's technological progress. More than that, it bridges cultural differences across archipelago and opens a window for Indonesia to share its heritage with the world. Nusantara Lima, powered by PSN, Indonesia's leading satellite company. Continuously ushering the nation into the era of digital transformation. In the mission of carrying connectivity across borders, Nusantara Lima's reach spans across the archipelago to the Philippines and Malaysia. It was born from years of dedication, combining world-class expertise, united in one grand vision. From design to reality, every bolt, every circuit carries a story of perseverance and pride. This collaboration strengthens our sovereignty and places Indonesia shoulder to shoulder on the stage of global technology. From Los Angeles, the skybound Voyager traveled to its launch site. It awaits the moment to fly, carrying the hopes of a nation into the boundless sky. As engines ignite and the Earth falls away, Nusantara Lima lifts all our dreams, breaking the limits of time and space.
Decontamination sequence activated.
Nusantara Lima, a great leap toward equal national connectivity. From the sky for the motherland, uniting us all for generations to come.
Falcon 9 is a two-stage rocket that stands 229 feet tall and at launch produces more than 1.7 million pounds of thrust from its 9 Merlin engines. Rockets like Falcon don't use all of that power just to go straight up. Early in flight, Falcon 9 will perform what's called a gravity turn, which is a smooth pitch that tilts the rocket sideways so it can build up horizontal velocity. You may hear this call out about 10 seconds into launch as vehicle pitching downrange. A couple of minutes into flight, once the first stage completes its portion of the mission, it shuts down its engines and separates. A staged rocket like Falcon 9 sheds the first stage booster so stage 2 and the payload can keep climbing faster and more efficiently. And there we just heard a call out from our launch team that we have begun thermally conditioning Falcon 9's.
Ya, selamat pagi warga Republik Digital dimanapun berada. Hari ini kita akan melihat secara live peluncuran satelit Nusantara Lima dari Florida-Amerika Serikat. Waktu yang dibutuhkan untuk peluncuran itu sendiri membutuhkan waktu sekitar 27 menit 25 detik. Satelit Nusantara Lima dimiliki oleh PT Pasifik Satelit Nusantara. Ini merupakan kali keempat satelit ini dicoba untuk diluncurkan setelah beberapa kali dicoba tapi ternyata kondisi cuaca yang tidak memungkinkan. Kita masih menunggu karena 2 hari yang lalu juga ketika peluncuran itu hanya tinggal 30 detik kemudian juga dibatalkan. Ya, sekarang masih menunjukkan waktu yang kurang lebih sekitar 5 menit 37 detik untuk roket Falcon 9 ini diluncurkan dari Cape Canaveral, Florida-Amerika Serikat. Terus pantau peluncuran ini bersama saya, Heru Stadi.
And parachutes and fairings using their parachutes to land safely for recovery, all to fly again. And getting to space is definitely the first step in building our multiplanetary future. Back to today's mission, we continue to watch the weather closely. Now, T-minus 5 minutes and counting.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
And that is a good call out there that the propellant tanks within Falcon 9 are being pressurized. This helps the rocket be a little more stable as we prepare to retract the transporter erector, or the TE, here in the next few minutes. The TE is the large truss structure that you see standing next to the rocket. It's hinged at the base and connected to the launch mount structure. You can see those cradle arms have opened. The TE itself is part of the structure that rolls Falcon 9 out to the pad, raises it vertical, and then stays connected until the final seconds of the countdown. The TE, or strongback, provides fuel, power, telemetry, and command connections between the ground systems and Falcon 9. And there you see the TE pulling back just a couple of degrees to its pre-launch position. At T0, when Falcon 9 lights its engines and lifts off, the TE will perform a final throwback maneuver to help protect its systems for a rapid turnaround for the next flight off of this pad in the coming days.
Ya, dapat saya sampaikan bahwa satelit Nusantara Lima merupakan satelit telekomunikasi yang memiliki daya tampung yang cukup besar, ya, sekitar 160 gigabit. Ini memang diperkirakan dapat melayani wilayah Indonesia dan juga beberapa negara tetangga. Jadi kapasitasnya dari 160 gigabit per second, ya. Nusantara 5 ini merupakan satelit sebagai pengganti satelit Nusantara 2 yang gagal mencapai orbit pada peluncuran di tahun 2020.
Liquid starts moving. Coming up momentarily, we should hear a call out for the completion of liquid oxygen loading onto the second stage.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
And with that call, Falcon 9 is fully fueled for liftoff 1 minute and 50 seconds from now. You probably also notice the white clouds venting from the rocket. That's actually condensation. As
Ya, waktu peluncuran masih sekitar 1 menit 35 detik. Jadi memang ketika 1 menit 35 detik ini command flight computer memulai untuk final pre-launch check. Kemudian juga nanti juga flight pressure juga dimulai. Kita melihat nanti di detik ke-45, jadi SpaceX Launch Director akan memverify apakah Falcon 9 ini akan meluncur atau tidak. Nanti kita lihat di detik ke-49 dan juga nanti di detik ketiga itu baru control engine command akan dinyalakan dan dimulai, dan pada detik 00 Falcon 9 akan berangkat.
Director, go for launch.
And with our final go for launch and a good weather forecast here for the final 30 seconds, let's sit back and watch Falcon 9 take the Nusantara Lima satellite into orbit.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7.
Ya, kita hitung bersama. 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes. Falcon 9 mengangkasa. Nanti akan pada menit pertama, 1 menit 12 detik, akan tercapai max Q ya. Jadi momen merupakan peak dari mechanical stress dari roket. Memang ada stagingnya. Kemudian menit kedua 28 ada first stage main engine cut off. Nanti di menit kedua 28. Jadi kita lihat di menit 1:12 dulu.
Force Station in Florida. In just a few seconds, we'll start throttling down the 9 Merlin engines in preparation for max Q, the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure. This is a critical moment during flight because the combined stresses caused by Falcon 9 accelerating through the atmosphere and the ambient static pressure are at their greatest.
Falcon 9 supersonic.
To help go from vertical to horizontal, the first stage has performed a pitch kick maneuver. This maneuver, known as the gravity turn, gimbals Falcon 9's engines just a small amount to slowly turn the first stage so that it's going from straight up to a more horizontal orientation. And as you heard, we have passed through max Q. Everything looking good on Falcon 9 about a minute and a half into the flight. Coming up shortly, we'll have 3 events that'll happen in quick succession, and we should hear all of those called out by mission control, starting with main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation, and then stage engine start 1. That call out you just heard means we are now thermally conditioning the second stage's MVAC engine in preparation for its ignition. That ignition will happen after stage 1 shuts down its engines and separates, after which the stage 1 booster will begin to...
Jadi nanti akan kita lihat di menit kedua, 2 menit 28 detik, di mana bagian pertama dari engine utama ini akan cut off, dan juga pada menit kedua 31 detik antara stage 1 dan 2 itu akan terpisah karena roket itu akan beberapa stage gitu ya. Ya kita lihat nanti sebentar lagi di 228. Ya, sudah terpisah. Level pertama dan level kedua.
And there we had those 3 events in quick succession: main engine cutoff, stage separation, and the ignition of the second stage's MVAC engine. Coming up in just a few moments, we should hear a call out for payload fairing separation. The 2 payload fairing halves are encapsulating and protecting the Nusantara Lima payload right now, but once the stage climbs into the vacuum of space, those payload fairings are no longer needed and they will be jettisoned.
Tadi di menit kedua 38 detik engine stage kedua sudah dinyalakan.
Are following the planned flight path today. And confirmation of payload fairing.
Ya, ada pemisahan di menit ke-3 24 detik.
These fairing halves, once they fall back to Earth with our recovery vessel Doug, which is currently stationed downrange in the Atlantic Ocean. Coming up in just under 3 minutes, we'll have the entry burn of the first stage booster. That should last roughly 20 seconds. At the start of that entry burn, we will relight 3 of the Merlin engines on the first stage in a maneuver that's similar to pumping the brakes to slow the vehicle down as it passes back into Earth's dense lower atmosphere. The entry burn will help reduce the heat generated from friction with the atmosphere and reduce the overall aerodynamic forces acting on Falcon 9's first stage. All of these things help maintain controlled flight and also help prepare the vehicle for the landing burn. During that entry burn, Falcon 9 will be decelerating by firing its Merlin engines, but the vehicle is still moving quite fast at this point. This causes it to fly through its own engine's exhaust, also known as the rocket's plume. This deposits a layer of soot on the outside of the vehicle, which is why our flight-proven Falcon 9s look the way that they do. That soot comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses, and with each flight, that soot builds up a little bit more on the outside of the vehicle. Now, just over 5 minutes into the flight, you can see the telemetry for Stage 1 there on the bottom left of your screen as it descends through 110 kilometers altitude. On the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the telemetry information for Stage 2 as it continues to accelerate onwards towards orbit. Reusability is key to lowering the cost of spaceflight, enabling more investments in critical space infrastructure. The Falcon 9 first stage supporting today's mission is performing or will perform this entry burn for the 23rd time tonight. The payload fairings are also flight proven on today's flight, with one half supporting its 16th mission and the other supporting its 11th. Coming up shortly on that entry burn, you can see our dual view here, Falcon 9's first stage on the left-hand side of your screen and Falcon 9's second stage continuing to orbit on the right.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there we can see Falcon 9 performing its 3-engine entry burn to slow itself down as it enters Earth's atmosphere. This burn should last about 23 seconds and will help prepare the vehicle for the final landing burn down onto the drone ship.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down. Both vehicles are following nominal trajectories.
And confirmation of a good entry burn and that both stages of Falcon 9 continue to follow the pre-planned trajectories today. Now, the Merlin engines on Falcon 9's first stage are optimized for sea level, and these achieve about 190,000 pounds of thrust during ascent and descent each. At liftoff, Falcon 9's first stage had a thrust greater than 5 747 airplanes at full power. Conversely, the single MVAC engine on the second stage, which has a much wider nozzle, is optimized to operate in the vacuum of space and is capable of producing 220,500 pounds of thrust in vacuum. Coming up in just a few seconds.
Stage 2 has entered terminal guidance.
Stage 2 now performing the final maneuvers to enter the desired orbit today as Stage
1 transonic.
1 is now transonic, approaching the drone ship.
Confident.
The first stage booster is headed for the shortfall of Gravitas drone ship stationed in the Atlantic Ocean. And Stage 2 is preparing to shut down its engines after achieving the initial parking orbit today.
One landing bird.
And there we see just about the same time Falcon 9's first stage reigniting its center Merlin engine for the landing burn as Stage 2's MVAC engine cut off after reaching orbit.
One landing leg deploy. Nominal parking orbit insertion.
And Falcon 9 has landed on the shortfall of Gravitas drone ship. Just as it was touching down, we also had confirmation that Stage 2 is in the correct orbit. So with that, we now have roughly 14 minutes of coast as the second stage moves to the point in its orbit to do its next burn, which will send the Nusantara Lima satellite into a geosynchronous transfer orbit. The start of that second burn should come at around the T+22 minute mark. We'll be back to cover that and show that and be here with you, but for now, let's enjoy some space tunes, and we'll see you back here in a few minutes.
ini dipakai karena kemampuannya menurunkan orbit dengan 9 wandi Falcon 9 Block 5 yang digunakan untuk peluncuran Nusantara Lima ini adalah generasi kelima ya, yang dirilis di 2018. Jadi Blok 5 itu dirancang untuk meningkatkan daya tahan dan kemampuan terus yang cukup izin pakai berulang-ulang. Target bisa hingga 10 kali penerbangan yang setiap tahun. Hingga September 2025 ini 500 peluncuran yang sukses
Hello and welcome back to our live coverage of the Nusantara Lima mission. We are back from our first coast phase and just in time for second engine start 2. In just a few seconds, we will have a roughly 40-second burn of the second stage's MVAC engine, which is shown on, which we will see momentarily.
Ya, kita menunggu menit ke-23, 13 detik. Tahap kedua ini akan dinyalakan.
MVAC startup.
Ya,
And there we have good call out of the ignition of the MVAC engine. This is the second burn of the MVAC on today's flight. The first burn started around 2.5 minutes into launch and lasted for about 5.5 minutes until we reached our initial orbit, which we call a parking orbit. The burn taking place right now will place the Nusantara Lima satellite into its needed geosynchronous transfer orbit for payload deploy. Let's watch and listen in for confirmation of shutdown and a good burn.
MVAC shutdown.
Confirmation that the MVAC engine shut down as expected. For the next 7 minutes, we'll be in another coast before we reach
Nominal orbit insertion.
Deployment of the Nusantara Lima satellite. And there was confirmation that we are in the proper orbit for payload deploy. So with that, we're going to take a short break, and we'll see you back here in a few minutes at about T plus 27 minutes.
tinggal menunggu waktu saja. Ia tinggal menunggu waktu saja untuk detik-detik pelepasan dari satelit Nusantara Lima. Jadi kalau kita lihat memang percobaan peluncuran ini pertama itu 8 September batal karena kondisi cuaca, dan juga berlanjut 9 hingga 10 September di mana window time dari peluncuran yang bergeser gitu ya. Di Amerika Serikat tentunya hari ini adalah tanggal 11 September. Jadi waktu 21.29, di Indonesia waktu 9:22 menit. Tahap pertama booster tadi sudah mendarat dengan sukses di atas kapal drone di Samudra Atlantik sekitar 8,5 menit setelah lepas landas, sehingga ini menandai penerbangan ke-23 untuk booster tersebut sebelum digunakan untuk misi berikutnya.
And welcome back to the Nusantara Lima mission. We're now just over 27 minutes into today's flight and coming up on deployment of the satellite into its geosynchronous transfer orbit. To recap today's mission so far, Falcon 9 lifted off at 9:56 p.m. Eastern Time from Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. About 2.5 minutes later, the first stage shut down and separated, and then headed for a successful landing on the A Shortfall of Gravitas drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean about 8.5 minutes after taking off from Pad 40. The second stage then took the Nusantara Lima satellite into its desired transfer orbit via 2 burns of its MVAC engine. We're now standing by for that geostationary communications satellite for Pacific Satellite Nusantara, or PSN, to be deployed. Here's a little bit more about today's payload.
Indonesia is an ocean of islands, more than 17,000, where distance can stand between people and opportunity.
Ya, demikian peluncuran Nusantara 5 dari Tanjung Canaveral, Florida-Amerika Serikat. Nanti satelit ini akan butuh waktu untuk ditempatkan pada slot orbit 113 derajat bujur timur. Tentu memang ini merupakan kesuksesan yang pertama, karena memang masih ditunggu apakah ini bisa mencapai slot orbit yang ditentukan atau tidak, karena memang masih juga ada potensi-potensi kendala untuk bisa sampai slot orbit gitu ya. Terutama misalnya kalau satelitnya itu dilepas pada titik yang memang bergeser dari titik sebagaimana sudah ditentukan. Ya, terima kasih atas perhatian warga Republik Digital dimanapun berada. Kita jumpa kembali di episode berikutnya yang tidak kalah penting dan menarik. Sampai jumpa, terima kasih.